eat raw horse meat. It's called basashi.
No, not raw, but the thing is here that since I'm part of I'm a farmer, so if the horse is old and needs to be sent away, why not eat it? Why should we burn it or just dig it down?
Yeah. It's edible. Yeah. But I don't like to eat
Hello,
it because
everybody.
Is it gamey?
depends. I think if it's a farm one, I think it's okay. It's not wild horse meat, right? It's farmed horse meat, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Vinny.
So let's all the vegans flame you now. Come on.
You have to say, yo, I'm done first. Hi, Vinay.
Hey, hi, Bene. You want to read the article?
Which one?
The Bamodi.
Oh, the one in the earlier session. Yeah, I had to drop off. Hey, I just wanted to tell Tyler, my
Yes.
podcast interview of you is going viral, my friend.
Oh, really?
Hey, can you send to us? Can you send to me?
Yeah.
I'll pin it on top.
Yeah, I'll put it in.
Pin it on top.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
I'll send it.
Oh, Vinay,
Went
Vinay,
viral.
Going viral. Great.
Vinay, I have good news
He's
for
going
you.
bungalow. He's going bungalow.
Hey, when are you coming?
I'm starting my monthly events in Bangalore starting in January, end of January.
Awesome. And are you sort of flying in?
Yes.
Well, no, he'll be swimming. He'll be swimming.
Yeah,
He's
that's a
swimming
long
there.
swim. Yeah.
He's going to swim
He's
there.
teleporting.
The
Might as well
flying.
fly.
Time travel because he's from future.
Well, there's a new startup that does teleporting, so who knows?
Sure.
I'm for sure certain that Cal does teleport. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm super excited
Vinay.
about it. And
Wow.
Oh, imagine all that food, Tyler, that you can eat in India. Oh my God.
Woohoo!
Woohoo.
Oh, they have Japanese curry in India too, by the way. It's doing quite well.
No. It's
really?
Indian curry that went to Japan and they called it Japanese curry. Come on, Cheryl.
Curry is Indian, Cheryl. Don't even try
No,
to
we
make it
already
Japanese.
remember we already did the Tech News Jeopardy. You are the one who got the correct answer. Curry is from UK. Remember?
No, it's not.
No, curry is from India, and UK took it there when they were in India. We taught
Listen,
them how to make
yeah.
curry. Mm-hmm.
Listen, Cheryl, if you keep saying curries from, we may have to expand Little India in Singapore, okay?
Oh, we already. Oh yeah. I'm wondering how Mustafa is doing now.
Really good, actually. They've gone online.
Oh yes, because of the pandemic. Pivoted. Okay.
Not that one.
Yeah, I'll post the podcast thing in our group in the back channel, and you can pin it.
Yeah,
Cheryl.
I will.
Just DM it to you can DM it to Cheryl. She'll pin it.
Yeah, I can pin it up.
All right. Is everybody ready?
She doesn't have the green bean, so it would be hard for her to do that.
There we go. Thank you, Johan. Well, welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday. I hope everyone had a good weekend. We got about 30 seconds of snow here in Stockholm. And I saw one of the most bizarre events I've ever seen in my life yesterday. I went to Uppsala, which is the big university north of Stockholm, with a big old church, beautiful church, walked through the church. Then, beautiful town, by the way. I had never been there before because it's like an hour train ride north of Stockholm. Anyway, went to the church, which you must do if you go there. And then roaming around, then thought, let's go see the castle. So there's a castle on a pink castle on a hill. And go to the castle. And I'm with my cousin, basically, who just moved there. He's half Swedish, by the way. His mother's Swedish. And he just started going to the university there as a data scientist for a master's degree in data science. And we walk up to the castle to see the sunset. Because sun's setting. We're the only ones there. Next thing I know, there's 20 people there. And I'm thinking, oh, everyone's here to see the sunset. And we're just talking up there. We got no other plan. 10 minutes later, there's about 80 people there. I was like, wow, I guess this is the thing to do. Is everyone coming up here to see the sunset? 5 minutes later, there's 200 people up there. And I'm thinking, is this what people do here? They come to see the sunset. Within 30 minutes, there's 7,000 people there. No exaggeration. And
How romantic.
well, no, they're not there to see the sunset because they're not even looking in the direction where the sun is setting. They're looking the opposite direction at the castle. All of them, every one of them. And I'm thinking, what is it? Apparently there's going to be some light show of some kind. And I'm thinking, is this some annual Christmas tradition where they light up the castle with the lights on the roof? You know, kind of, we do this in Southern California where people light up the big Christmas tree in Times Square or not Times Square. Where's the Rockefeller Center in New York City? You know, we have, seasonal hall, little things. And I'm thinking this must be an annual tradition because the whole city's here on this hill at the castle. Like, I didn't know the city had this many people. Like, we walked around the city for several hours that day. I didn't see anywhere near this number of people that are now all standing scrunched together on the top of this hill at the castle. Looking, again, at the castle, not looking at the sunset. And they're waiting and waiting and waiting. We waited there for 40 minutes and people just kept coming and coming and coming. And then there was 6 people. And we can find a video of this on YouTube, I'm sure, because there was 7,000 people there all filming this. There was 6 people standing on the roof of the castle, which is not meant to be stood on. It has a considerable slope to it, so it's not safe to be standing on. So they had to have cables and harnesses and everything. And then all of a sudden, they start singing like a barbershop quartet, and their suits light up, like their whole outfit lights up. It's all dark. There's no light show. The castle doesn't light up. There's no Christmas lights, nothing. Just these 6 individuals kind of light up, and then they start singing in Swedish, and then that goes on for 5 minutes. And then on the other side of the castle, because it's very big, another group lights up, and it's a bunch of people playing like African drums on the roof of the castle, which has a very considerable slope that, it would be incredibly dangerous to stand on normally without cables. And then they drum for 5 minutes, and then it goes back to the singers again. And at this point, everyone starts leaving because it's freezing. It's literally snowing. So after 15 minutes of this performance that nobody knew what to expect, it turns out, and it was the most surreal thing ever. Like for the 30 minutes that we were watching people come in, and then waiting for the performance to begin. And no one knew what to expect. I least of all knew what to expect. I had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. It felt like we were in a dream where, you're standing somewhere and next thing you know, you're surrounded by 7,000 people and this weird thing is happening on the roof of a castle. I expected my mother to show up all of a sudden. Like, it felt like I was deep in a dream or something. And it was a very bizarre experience. So that was my Sunday afternoon. So if you are a Swede in the audience, or you know someone who lives in Uppsala who can help unpack that mystery of what the hell I just experienced, please let me know. I'm still very confused, and I would love to figure it out. So, air horn, and we get into the top story. Spotify removes the shuffle play feature as the default option on albums for premium users. So tracks play in the order that the artist intended after Adele requests the change. And Adele has tweeted about this, saying, "This was the only request I had in our ever-changing industry. We don't create albums with so much care and thought into our track listings for no reason. Our art tells a story, and our stories should be listed as we intended. Thank you, Spotify, for listening." And she's kind of speaking for everyone, saying our art and blah, blah, blah. And she certainly has a good point. I've been in studios during the making of some incredibly famous records with the artists, and spent most of my 20s in recording studios, and was very fortunate to be part of some very incredibly famous albums. And I can tell you firsthand, some artists care about this tremendously. It is a very real consideration, and those albums should be listened to in the order that the artist intended, and they should be listened to as an album as they were intended. And but that's not every album. So I'm thinking the optimum option here would be to allow the artist to decide for themselves on each album, do they want to offer the ability for the listener to shuffle the sequence of the tracks or not. And I can assure you that Pink Floyd would not want you to shuffle the sequence of The Dark Side of the Moon or any of their albums. And I'm sure the Beatles, well, they might not care that much, but the White Album, a lot of the OK Radiohead, OK Computer might not want to give you the option, but they might not object. But Adele does want you to listen to the album as an album, and I totally respect that. And I think it's very cool that that people do listen to an album as an album if that's what the artist's expression genuinely is. For a very important reason. Because some of my very favorite songs only make sense in the context of the album, and in the age of singles that we live in post iTunes, where you could buy songs, and it was really Steve Jobs who really shook up this whole format from going from albums to singles with the invention of iTunes and 99 cents per song. That changed everything. And then Spotify and the streaming services took that to a further degree, and that has fundamentally changed how audiences, young people today, don't even understand what the concept of an album is, and young musicians today don't even feel the need to write in the context of albums. And I think it will eventually go away as time goes on. But that's not the first time. Before the traditional long play album, that's why they're called LPs, by the way, there were EPs, and then before that there were 45s. And on 45s you had, it even started out as singles originally back in the 50s with Elvis, and Sun Records, and these tiny little 45s, and you get one or two songs on one side and another one or two songs on the other side. And that was the norm for a very long time. And then you got into the era of the albums, which interestingly, I think music really flourished tremendously, because now you're making a very much larger artistic statement in the context of an album with artwork. And it had an influence on social movements at times. It really shaped culture tremendously. It shaped fashion tremendously. It shaped, the movements, the Beatles alone, David Bowie alone, the Sex Pistols alone. My goodness, some albums really shaped American culture, notably in certain disco as well. But anywho, it's a really interesting evolution of how music was formatted based on physical, you could call it hardware, and that hardware has had an influence on the evolution of the art form. And now we're going into the metaverse, and my goodness, I can't wait to see what the metaverse does to the art form of music. So, become far more visual. For one thing, I think artists will start thinking more in terms of experiences than just sonics. Anyhow.
Hey, Tyler, this
Yeah.
is Daniel over here.
Hey.
I just wanted to mention that that used to drive me crazy that you couldn't listen to albums in order on Spotify.
Yeah.
And you talk about like Dark Side of the Moon, okay? The second half of Abbey Road. I mean, I'm just glad they made this change.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks.
I'm really surprised it wasn't put into place earlier, and they must have heard this endless times over their history. I mean, they started in the U.S. in 2007. I mean, this is more than a decade. I'm sure they hear this countless times a month from artists.
I don't understand why.
Well, I think it was for legal reasons, honestly, and this is why it says that it's only for the premium users, because part of the deal of the non-paid users is that they're not able to control the song that comes next. Everything's shuffled. If you're a non-premium user, and that's because the law is you're not going to be able to pick, you know, what comes. It has to be random in a way. It has to be out of the user's control. But on premium, again, yeah, they could have done this a long time ago. Kudos to Adele for being the straw that broke the camel's back. Basically, I can't imagine she's the first person, the first artist to suggest this. But hey, it is what it is, and so anyway, next article is that.
Hey, thank you. Sorry, Tyler. Thank
Yes,
you, Cheryl, for pinning the podcast interview with Tyler. So, folks,
okay,
give it a listen.
let's see.
Tyler went into his rant.
Let's see. So
Thank you,
shiny.
Tyler.
I'm clicking on the link now. I'll I'll
That's what made it viral.
I'll
No,
tweet it
it's called
out.
Shiny Happy People, right? So
Yeah,
Shiny bought Happy Tyler.
shiny bald people. Yeah, let's see how it is.
I thought you were gonna say happy bot, shiny Tyler.
Shiny headed people. It's called Shiny Happy People, and it says technology has taken over our lives, but what is the downside to it? Meet the tech maverick who is credited as the force behind Stockholm's rise as the startup capital of Europe and the unicorn factory of the world. You copy and pasted that from some other journalist because that's been written many times. um, anyway, it goes into the how tech ecosystems and startup cities from LA to London to Stockholm, ingredients for a successful startup ecosystem. Is big tech dead? Why I chose to live off the grid, the future of tech, climate, refugees, green tech, and more. Yep, it's kind of like my greatest hits of rants right there. So,
Yeah, and he does not give his island address. No matter how much I tried, he did not give the address to his island.
well, Shane knows the address because Shane just was with me for the past week. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, but I think he's now in Bangkok, and he just sent me some a DM photos, and I got to pull Shane up because these photos are really quite interesting. If he's not on stage already, and if you're
Yeah,
not,
yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
okay.
I'm here, Tyler.
So Shane, those photos appeared to be a very luxurious. I would even dare say, by Bangkok standards, a bit of a mansion, uh, a luxurious residence that is fully solar powered with their own food supply, and it appears that it would be their own water supply.
Yeah, food supply, water supply, completely surrounded by water-resistant walls. So, Bangkok is sinking a meter a year, in addition to the sea level rising. So, this compound, which is it looks about, I'm thinking it's about in square meters, about 6,000 square meters. It's not a single residence. It's built by some kind of foundation. I'm still trying to figure out what the foundation is all about. But it's basically a very large multi-house, self-contained unit, which has been built in the last 3 years, right in the center of the CBD in Bangkok. It's extraordinary. When they started building, I thought it was just another housing estate, but it's turned into something really, really extraordinary, really quite amazing.
Yeah, it seems like somebody's onto the the self sovereign um, approach to things there. Yeah, that's a whole lot of solar they got there too, and a
Oh,
beautiful.
it's huge. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's even bigger than mine, and mine's not small. I don't. Did you get to see my solar setup?
Yep. Did took a look around. Walked right up the hill. Had a really good look around at things. Yeah, it's. I think it's bigger than your setup down there, which
Yeah,
keeps you in power.
yeah,
But this is they're powering a pool. There's so much going on in this complex, and one of the panoramic picture I sent up to you, that I thought that was kind of interesting because right beside it is an old traditional Thai house. Well, not traditional, I guess,
yeah,
1920s
yeah.
Thai house, right, which is their neighbor. So you've got this tremendous contrast of the the old Bangkok style with the brand new, looking forward, self-contained, self-sufficient, protected. Really protected. Those walls are 15 feet high
and
around
and
the compound.
and
So
and nearly
they're not,
maybe a meter thick. Like that thing looks like a fortress. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They're not. They're not exactly inviting visitors. And we've asked politely if we can have a look around. They're saying not until next year, so that
Mm.
whatever they're doing, it will be public eventually, but not right now.
And the swimming pool has a huge floating rubber ducky in it. So
It does. It does. There are kids in there. So right now, you can see my house on the other side of the compound, but right now we're staying in one of the high rises on the other side, so we can look down and see everything that's going on. And yeah, there was kind of family swimming there today with kiddies and enjoying the yellow rubber duck. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a
The,
residence,
the,
but it's a total apocalypse ready residence.
Yep, yep. I'm trying to book my berth in the for the coming apocalypse. Yeah.
Okay, so the next article is crypto payments service called MoonPay, MOON, which lets users buy a card, Apple Pay, and more. Raises $555 million, led by Tiger Global and Katu, at a $3.4 billion valuation. Crypto payment service MoonPay lets users buy with card. So you can have a crypto and you can use a card, but a lot of people are allowing you to spend your crypto with cards these days. So, but you can also pay with Apple Pay and more. So, a bit of an easy way to spend your crypto. The next one's the Washington Post, that they say they have sources and internal documents that show that Facebook's race blind policies. So let me pause right there, because before I read the rest of that article, should Facebook have race blind policies, or should they have policies based on race? Should their algorithms be based on races or not? Should they be race agnostic, kind of race blind, color blind as it is? Let's go in that order. Give a mic flash if you think Facebook should be race in, what's the word I'm looking for? Race blind, I guess, right? Or color blind, or whatever you want to call it. Like not have policies specific to specific races. It sounds like a simple question. Who thinks they should have policies on Facebook related to races? Well, somebody was flashing their
I
head.
think in Singapore you're not you're supposed to be race blind
Mm-hmm.
because you're
It
supposed to be
depends
in
on how
racial
they're rolling
harmony,
them
right?
out. What
Regardless of
information?
race and
Yeah.
religion.
Right. Well, by the
Tyler,
way,
are they race blind
I
like based on biased AI? Are they race blind? I mean, how are they? What are the policies and how are they implemented?
yeah, their policy is similar to Sweden, where you can't, you don't have any metrics that you have a box to even acknowledge the race of the user. So I'll give you an example. In the case of Sweden, if there's and this is what gets brought up all the time in the news, and critics of Sweden say Sweden doesn't have a box on the police report for the race of the individual, for example. So there's no way to keep. They don't allow the classification of anybody by their appearance in terms of skin color or anything like that. So to give you an example, the Danes are fond of making fun of this point, and there's comedian and comedy shows where there's a bridge between Sweden and Denmark, between Malmo and Copenhagen. It's a very popular bridge that connects the two cities, and the crime happens right in the middle of the bridge. And then the Danish police show up and the Swedish police show up, but the Swedish police got there first. And so the Danish police show up and they say, okay, did you see the individual? They're like, yeah, of course. He was a male, about 180 centimeters, about X number of pounds. And they say, right, well, what kind of, and then on the Danish police card, it says, what race, description. And the Swedes are like, no, we have no idea. And they're like, but you saw the guy, right? Yep. Okay, well, was he Caucasian? Was he, dark, this, Latino, Asian? No, we don't know. So the Danes are like, what are you talking about? You don't know. So as an example. So the question is, should Facebook be the same? Should Facebook be more like Sweden or more like Denmark?
That's a tough question because if it's algorithmic based, then that may pose a problem, where you have people of color who would say we're not being recognized or the algorithm isn't taking our race into consideration. And then you'll have another side that says they're being ignored. I think it's going to get sticky if you take race out of it, but overall, I'd love for us to be more like the Danes.
I have an example here. It says white. It's code. Okay, it's not from me. It's a code. White men are stupid. Are considered bad. Algorithmically, are rated as bad because they are racist.
Right. So if you remove race, then that gets to fly, right?
Yep.
So
Therein lies the issue.
the article continues. It says, this is why I wanted people to think about this before we read the article. It says that Facebook's race-blind policies about and in regard to hate speech has left minorities more likely to see derogatory and racist language on the site. I guess implying, well, let's read it and find out, but I get the sense they're implying that if they were to acknowledge race, then they could essentially protect people from hate speech more effectively, I think is their argument. Let's see if I'm right in my assumptions here. I keep get this. I don't know what it is. Hold on. I think I figured you out, Washington Post. I did. Gotcha. So it says Facebook's race-blind practices around hate speech came at the expense of Black users. New documents show researchers proposed a fix to the biased algorithm, but one internal document predicted pushback from conservative partners. Last year, researchers at Facebook showed executives an example of a kind of hate speech circulating on the social network, an actual post featuring an image of four female Democratic lawmakers known collectively as the Squad. The poster, whose name was scrubbed out for privacy, referred to the women, two of whom are Muslim, as Swami ragheads, quote unquote. The comment from other person used even more vulgar language, referring to the four women as color as a truly terrible phrase, black C dash 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 S. According to internal company documents exclusively obtained by the Washington Post. The post represented the worst of the worst language on Facebook, the majority of it directed at minority groups, according to the 2-year effort by the large team working across the company. And the document said the researchers urged executives to adopt an aggressive overhaul of its software system that would primarily remove only those hateful posts before any Facebook users could see them. But Facebook's leaders balked at the plan. According to two people familiar with the internal debate, two executives, including Vice President for Global Public Policy Joel Kaplan, feared the new system would tilt the scales by protecting some vulnerable groups over others. That's the to me, that was the obvious intelligent counter to this on one side. Because the idea is Facebook needs to be seen as behaving neutrally. And if you start protecting one group more than another, then you get on a very slippery slope of to what degree you're protecting different groups and you're no longer neutral. A policy executive prepared a document for Kaplan that raised the potential for backlash from conservative partners. According to the document, the people spoke to the Post on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive internal matters. The previously unreported debate is an example of how Facebook's decisions, in the name of being neutral and race blind, in fact, come at the expense of minorities and particularly people of color. The previously unreported debate is an example of how Facebook's decisions, in the name of being neutral and race blind, in fact, come at the expense of, you haven't really proven how it comes at the expense of people of color yet. We need data on that. You mean it can in a singular instance? Yeah, of course. Every group is of every possible, everybody's getting hate speech on Facebook, but you have not actually shown that one group is receiving more than another here. You don't have access to that data, so it wouldn't be possible for you to show that. So you're starting to step into, what's that phrase I always search for? A bit of activism here. It says, far from protecting Black and other minority users, Facebook executives wound up instituting half measures after the Worst of the Worst project that left minorities more likely to encounter derogatory and racist language on the site, the people said. Quote, even though Facebook executives don't have any animus towards people of color, their actions are on the sides of racists, says Tatenda Musapa Tike, a former Facebook manager working on political ads and the CEO of Voter Formation Project, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that uses digital communication to increase participation in local, state, and national elections. Quote, you are saying that the health and safety of women of color on the platform is not as important as pleasing your rich white man friends. How did gender come into this all of a sudden? The Black audience on Facebook is in decline, according to data from a study Facebook conducted earlier this year that was revealed in documents obtained by whistleblower Frances Haugen. According to the February report, the number of Black monthly users fell 2.7% in 1 month to 17.3 million adults. It also shows that the usage of Black people peaked in September 2020. Haugen's legal counsel provided redacted versions of the documents to Congress, which were viewed by consortium of news organizations, including the Post. Civil rights groups have long claimed that Facebook's algorithms and policies had a disproportionate negative impact on minorities, and particularly Black users. The Worst of the Worst documents show that those allegations were largely true in the case of which hate speech remained online, but Facebook didn't disclose its findings to civil rights leaders. Even the independent civil rights auditors Facebook hired in 2018 to conduct a major study of racial issues on its platform say that they were not informed of the details of research that the company's algorithms disproportionately harm minorities. Laura Murphy, a president of Laura Murphy and Associates, who led the civil rights audit process, said Facebook told her that the company does not capture data as to the protected groups against whom the hate speech was directed. Right. So Facebook itself doesn't have the data to know to what degree one group or another is being disproportionately affected. So how can this journalist claim that this is disproportionately impacting any one group? One more quote. I'm not asserting nefarious intent, but it is deeply concerning that metrics that showed the disproportionate impact of hate directed at Blacks, Jewish, Muslim, Arab, LGBTQIA users were not shared with the auditors. Well, they might not have it to share, is what it sounds like. Murphy said in a statement, clearly they have collected some data along those lines. Well, give us some evidence of that, because I think they're saying that they don't collect it, and they're intentionally not collecting it precisely for this reasons. And I would suggest, and I wonder if my Swedish friends on stage might agree, this is precisely why Sweden doesn't also collect it, is to avoid precisely these scenarios. That was a tee up for you, Craig. But I can understand if you don't want to jump on that. So,
Agreed.
okay, that's what I thought. And any other Swedes in the audience who it's an interesting instance where there's a country who has similar policies where people from that country, aka Sweden, uh, can chime in as to one of the. I think Dante and who else? Hans is from Denmark. I think Daniel is also from Sweden. So But Swedes generally don't want to get into these conversations, hence why they don't want to collect the data. Also, it's a very sensitive issue that they would prefer not to engage in, and hence the position. And I think Facebook's the same. I think Facebook doesn't want to engage in this. They want to, um, and that's it. I don't think they are collecting the data. I think they're intentionally not collecting it, and it's on that puts the onus of burden of proof on the people making any kind of assertions, which would be the people quoted in this article, and by extension, by proxy, the kind of the journalists themselves who are trying to make a case that Facebook disproportionately impacts, as they said in this article, black women. You got to have some evidence, but you're not going to have that evidence because Facebook isn't collecting that data.
How do you know they're not collecting that data? They could be. I'm just saying.
Yeah, without
They love your data.
yeah, they might, but then I think there would be a whistleblower that would step up with that. I would imagine. Like it, well, you raise a great point because if Facebook, due to this article that we just read, if Facebook does have that data, I imagine there's somebody internally who has access to that data who will, as we are speaking about this, is contacting the Wall Street Journal with that data as we speak to say, "Oh, I saw your article. Here's the smoking gun you were looking for." Okay, all the fun of being a social media platform, and so
Seriously.
Uh, Tala, may I
yeah,
just add something? Because this is going to the bottom of a lot of AI ethics stuff too. Because at the bottom of it, you have kind of dilemma. While the public or many politicians might think there is a neutral way to categorize, it is not, because we might think we are we having kind of principles, but if we analyze what you really do, for instance, we have also implicit principles, for instance, to protect the minority, to protect the weaker side, or to protect the people who were disadvantaged in history. This is what every ethnographer would find out if going into the discourse about it. And so we have not an easy solution. And it's not only about Facebook, and conflict avoidance
good
can only
night.
be for a while. It will later, we will have to find a solution. I don't know which, but there is a dilemma.
Yeah,
So I'd like to raise or make a contrast with France. They have a very strong tradition of being officially colorblind. Yet there are many people there who are not white who feel that there is substantial discrimination at many levels, and that was to the point that Paris and other parts of the country erupted into riots many years, or I guess it was 2014, over this issue. And the thing is, it's one thing for a government to say we're not going to keep track of race because we don't want to be able to use that for discrimination. That makes perfect sense. But when
meanwhile,
people in a
crocodile.
society still treat racial categories or ethnic categories as real, even if it's just in the subtext, that means discrimination can go on, and we need a way to be able to understand what is going on. So complete color blindness would seem to fail because you can have a problem, as France did, and blind yourself to it. So I don't have an answer, but I will make the point that whatever the answer is, it is not simple.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are persecuting crimes and you have costs of non-categorization, we also have the discussion, of course, in Germany. If there are some clusters or some significances in statistics, and then a policeman, a cop is just labeling in his head people like this, then we have a lot of discussion about, how do you call it, racial profiling. Yeah. The problem is, if there is some connection because of the um, long inequality of some ethnic groups in a society, and they have more crimes in their community, then of course, by game theory and pure math, you will have a cost of non-categorization because you don't um, use your resources in the right way, targeting on certain people who are more probable to do some crime. And the problem, even to talk about it, is that people instantly get offended because you remind them of this deep injustice or this deep unfairness and so on. But somehow we have to find, as I said, a kind of solution and cannot ignore it, especially if AI is doing all this judgment in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Stefan. And I would add to that, when you say we have to find who that we is that's at the table making decisions really makes a massive difference. And I think on the side of people who have felt harm, who felt disenfranchised and treated wrongly, that trust level has been eroded and sometimes it's completely gone. So when you think of large companies and our need moving into the metaverse and AI and all of this, needing to just trust them with our data or the ability to manage our data, or that they're not storing it, that trust level is not there. So I really do think it takes us being in that place. Now, I do want to say this. I am the founder and CEO of HireBlack.com, as well as a Black Metaverse. And it has the word black there because we need to. We needed to coalesce around some issues that create bridges. So our partnership with HireBlack.com actually creates jobs through Career Builder. That's our largest partnership. We did a big webinar with Ernst and Young last week, and the the desire is to build bridges. And somebody mentioned the word colorblind. um, Man, I don't know if we use that much anymore in our community. We actually see more of a color celebration, and it's very difficult to walk around in this beautiful world with so many different types of people and think of being colorblind. So it's standing up to the table, having a place, owning parts of that table, and working on some of these decisions. But I appreciate you bringing this article up. Thank you.
Okay, my mic on. Yeah, the somebody
Yes.
Pierre found a video from one of the other 7,000 people who watched that crazy, surreal, dreamlike performance at the Uppsala Castle yesterday. I pinned it to the top of the room, and it's from a lady named Sus or Susan. And translating her Swedish, she says, "Went down with the sister and brother-in-law and watched the closing show for the lights in Uppsala. It was a little bit chilly, and we were expecting more oomph from the closing show." Yeah, that's how everybody felt down below watching it. And note if you do watch this, that those colored people on the roof are full-sized human beings. That's how huge that roof is. And I imagine hopefully there's other videos. So thank you for finding that, Pierre. Um, okay, so the next big article is, where is it? Google is, well, by the way, I want to see that Washington Post article. I'm just trying to think about the hygiene of what inspired this Washington Post article. It seems like a continuation of the internal documents whistleblowing from out of Facebook that was started now, gosh, many weeks ago. And I think the intent is really to paint Facebook in a negative light. Um, I'm just thinking what's really behind this article. In that sense, it's sort of it is sort of a continuation. I mean, all of those articles have all been about painting Facebook in a negative light. The next, if anyone else has any thoughts on it, I'm curious to see how that one unfolds, and I'm be really curious to see if Facebook makes a response. There's actually, I'm noticing now there is a whole bunch of tweets about that article. The Atlantic has a piece with Jonathan Haidt, who Jonathan did a book all about. It's called "Coddling the American Mind." Actually, fine book, and he says regulators should take steps to mitigate Instagram's harm on teen girls, mandating access to data and toughening the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. I want to see if there's any really notable people tweeting about that article. Not so much. Okay, so next one's from Google. Google is rolling out a messages update that shows iMessage reactions as emojis. The latest update to Google Messages prepares for a new way to handle the annoying iMessage reaction messages often seen in mixed group chats. Is this what I think it is? This feature has already begun rolling out for some, allowing us to see it in action. iMessage reactions as emojis. Surely every Android fan has at least one friend with an iPhone who insists on using reactions even though you don't use iMessage. In those instances, you'll receive lengthy messages along the lines of liked an image, it says in text, or emphasized we're on our way. In an iMessage group, these are simple reactions, but in mixed conversations, a fallback message, it's just kind of now, and there's photos about it. I see. So basically, hopefully Apple's making more I think this is about Apple iMessage on Android. And in the newest beta update to Google Messages, version 10.7, we found that Google may be preparing a more clever way of handling incoming iMessage reactions. Okay, thank God for that. That said,
I mean, this is iMessage is
or
really
simply buy the iPhone, guys. All my friends who are not on iPhone, that's what they get every single time. Get an iPhone.
well. This is Apple's secret weapon is iMessage, because if you're a teenager and you're in a messaging group and you can't play with iMessage, you're really locked out. So
yeah,
Apple
That's
has
not the
a
only
lock.
feature. There are so many other things. I don't know why people get the Android
I'll
phone.
tell you
That's
this,
just me.
Gavin, I agree 1,000%. It is singularly the number one reason why I still get an iPhone each year and not switch over to like the Pixel is because in Sweden everyone's on iPhone, and it makes it very simple to reach out to people through iMessage, and that's invaluable. So if it weren't for that, there's a definite lock-in feature there. So they're not going to be quick to build that bridge between Android and iPhones. The next one is Paytm shares drop 13% after a 27% first day fall after its $2.5 billion IPO, cutting its market value to $12 billion in one of the worst debuts by a major tech company. Founder Sharma draws comparison to early struggles of Tesla. Critics had questioned the company's valuation based on losses. Okay, so they overpriced their IPO. Big whoop. It happens. It doesn't mean the company, it just means there was a lot of excitement leading up to the IPO traditionally, and they thought they could price it higher than the market wanted to pay for it. So now it's self-corrected.
All IPOs are overpriced.
Sometimes they get underpriced, and then it's actually sometimes a bigger problem where if you underprice it, you've left a whole bunch of money on the table, because as soon as you let the shares go out and then the price jumps, as Robinhood did initially. I mean, Robinhood has really gone down significantly since it's even below the original IPO price. But when it came out, I mean, it was, in fairness, part of like a meme stock pump, but it jumped Jesus, 100% at the open.
Yeah,
This is
but
act-
tell me the IPO that is up from its initial price 6 months later.
Yeah. Well, the part of that is the dynamic of many of the employees have a 6 month lock in, and there's a bunch of people from internally. This is their chance to become liquid, as we call it, and for the first time in 10 years, they're able to sell these shares they've been holding to buy a house or whatever. So you do get a whole bunch of kind of additional downward pressure in the early months of a tech IPO.
yeah,
You guys are
this is
talking about two different valuations, by the way. I just don't know if you know that. So there's a major difference between how it prices on day one versus how it prices months later. Because months later, you're getting closer to what maybe the fundamental valuation should be on its earnings and cash flows. But Tyler's correct. Almost all IPOs underprice on the first day, in the sense that from the company's perspective, they should try to get as much money as possible. Okay, and and typically they end up leaving a lot of money on the table because the underwriters are trying to also make their other client besides the company is the institutional investors, and they're trying to make them happy and kind of almost like guarantee them a profit, so they'll buy the next deal, which has nothing to do with the issuing company then. But there's almost like no question that on the first day that companies can do better getting pricing. And I think that's why, I think Tyler remind me, I think Spotify did it. I know Google did it.
Direct, yeah.
There's been a couple of companies been trying to do like some sort of Dutch auction or different type of pricing so that people can bid more efficiently. But
Yep.
yeah, but
th-
you are
this
absolutely correct.
yeah, this is I'm sorry, I have laryngitis. I don't know why. It's very weird. But this is the single strongest argument for against direct listing of companies, because there isn't a person who's experienced in dealing with the pricing. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. People think it's based strictly on the books and assets and things like that, and what's coming, like what currently exists, but it's really an art form. And direct listing tends to not price correctly for the current market. That's the one thing investment banks can do really well, is pick up what the triggers are on the market. But you also have the problems that exist when you have primarily selling shareholders that are the ones that are IPOing, because sometimes, I mean, often actually, you have an event where the company isn't actually getting money. It is the selling shareholders that are actually the ones that are selling their stock. It's a liquidity event for them. And the issue there is they're kind of fighting against the company sometimes for the valuation, because they want to be able to sell at a very high rate so that they can maximize their own value. But the company doesn't want to experience the public version of a down round, which is when your stock tanks. So it's a very difficult thing, and something that not many people are considering in this direct listing issue.
Yeah, I would agree. You know what? This is David. I went public with a company in 1999, May of '99, on the American Stock Exchange, and we did a PIPE a year later. But just like what Kim was talking about, but one of the things that I think has changed recently as well is that getting a gun underwriter was always the key because they knew the street. But what's happened in the past 5 to 10 years is that you've had this global market to where global input and the global street, so to speak, plus the aspect of like these sort of momentum or community stocks where there's a whole ecosystem around that stock and that whole brand or the founder team or whatever it might be, that it's in some circumstances some of the traditional underwriting process has got to moved away because you're in a global market, and really it's very difficult for any investment banker or underwriting firm to really know the investor base today. And many times Silicon Valley and these global communities, a Discord community, even something like that, can have as much influence as the underwriters used to. Thanks.
Okay. Next up, a look at Spotify's podcast investments, including its push into advertising and video advertising in podcasts, which just went live last week, and video podcasts, which they're also rolling out, as it appears poised to dominate the industry of podcasts, in particular video podcasts, which then paves the road for competing with the likes of YouTube, and maybe even eventually Netflix, because unlike YouTube, largely, Spotify is a monthly subscription service like Netflix, based on audio, but they could go into video. And they've made a whole bunch of interesting moves over the years that hinted that they would do this, most notably by hiring an old buddy of mine who was the head of content at YouTube to come over to Spotify for a while. He's now at Facebook as their head of commerce. Um, Anywho, yeah, Spotify has so many interesting moves to make going forward now that they have this 350 million monthly active users and a rather engaged user base, that they can, by adding advertising to the podcasts, they already have the advertising with the music, that, and then adding it to not only, and by the way, the journalist didn't even factor in, they could add in the audio network, the advertising network into what they call live audio, which is what we call social audio in Clubhouse land, and because Spotify does have a Clubhouse clone. And so Spotify's got music, podcasts, live audio, aka social audio, and audiobooks. And the beautiful part of that is they could continue to do what they've been doing so well, is lure people in with a free version and then have a paid version to remove the ads, essentially, and get additional other features. And that proposition gets more and more interesting as they continue to add more and more content, like podcasts and social audio and audiobooks. And they can, by the way, let's not forget that they're also getting into social commerce to allow people to sell stuff on their platform of Spotify. So when you're on a podcast, not only can the podcaster monetize as a content creator their podcasts, which, by the way, everybody and their dog has a podcast. However, the hard part of having a podcast is monetizing it. And the way to monetize it is to run ads. Well, today, most podcasters have to go out and get their own sponsors. But if Spotify can say, hey, would you like to turn on advertisements inside of your podcast? And we will target the ads to the user based on their demographics, like very targeted ads, which have very high dollar values. Instead of random values, like, if you read an ad for some VPN service, what percentage of your audience actually wants a VPN? You have no idea. But if we plug in our ad network, well, the people who fit that demographic will share that too. For the other people who fit other demographics, we will they give you tailored ads to each listener, because the ad goes to the listener. The ad network goes direct, same like on a web page. When I go to Google, I see ads for hair treatment, and if you have hair, you don't. That's why ad networks are so. Google's ad network in particular is so powerful, because it's optimized, and Spotify having an optimized, personalized, targeted ad network inside of audio is huge, because Apple does not have that yet. No doubt they're realizing they need to do that, and they're working on it. But Spotify's got quite a bit of a head start, and they can add it to live audio, aka what we're doing here. So imagine before every room you went into, there was a 5-second, 10-second, 15-second ad, targeted, personalized, tailored to you, that went to the creator of that room. Well, you might think you don't like that, and you could, if you were a paid subscriber, then you wouldn't hear that at all. But then you would have fantastic, high quality creators making all kinds of rooms. And this is not so different in the early days of blogging, where the early bloggers were nobody of particular interest or consequence. But once the money came into play and the advertisements came to blogging, next thing you know, everybody and their brothers got a blog because they can monetize. So they've got just so many crazy moves they can make between the ad network, personalized targeted ad network. It gives them a huge strength, and they're going in there. They add video to the podcast as well, and interesting to see if they'll add video to the their version of live audio as well. That would be wild. And that puts them much squarely in competition with Facebook. YouTube in that sense. It's going to be, they have so much. Oh, I forgot the social commerce piece. Jesus Christ. So all of the musicians, and we're talking millions of, and they have 3.2 million podcasts on the platform. Not only can the musician create, you have multiple types of creators. You have the musicians on Spotify, you have the live audio creators, you have the audiobook creators. All of them could sell actual stuff, social commerce on the platform. So the musicians can sell t-shirts and concert tickets and everything else. The authors on the audiobooks could actually sell additional stuff. And the live audio creators could also potentially sell actual stuff, have storefronts in all of this stuff. That's where the money starts going bananas for the creators. And that they're making a very compelling offering for the creators, especially anyone who has a podcast knows that the podcasting startup that they acquired, Anchor, Anchor, and all the data that they give their creators, the musicians get this amazing data rich dashboard that tells them all the analytics and demographic data that they could ever want. Same with the podcasters. It's really powerful proposition that they're shaping up with, and it's, most people are not aware of this because most people are not creators um, in the Spotify system, but they're shaping up to be. I would not be shorting their stock. Let me put it that way. And in full transparency, I'm a shareholder, and a very happy one at that, because I think they have a very bright future, and that's not financial advice. It's just connecting the dots on all of the amount of headlines we've seen lately. The dots are starting to come together.
Um, can I just, maybe I'm the only one that feels this way, but I have a little bit of a concern about the move into video, not for someone like musicians where people like to see it live performed or something like that, but for the standard podcasters who are just offering information verbally. There's something wonderfully equalizing about something like Clubhouse, which is this sort of imageless offering of information. And I like that. I like that it's, something like it's fun. You can, be in your pajamas all day and still have this, like conversation with people. But there's something that's wonderfully equalizing about a very visual, species that we are, about being able to listen to information without rating that information based on the appearance of the person delivering it. So without prior, like having a name to you, the concern that I have is the focus on watching people deliver podcasts is going to start favoring people who are more attractive or more dynamic in their, in the way that they deliver things, or are able to put together a higher value show, a higher image value show, and that is going to put it again back towards like this Kardashian leaning rather than content leaning. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that is concerned about that.
Alexander, that
I'm
might
not
be
sure
that
though,
might
but
be a
like,
concern, but there's already video podcasts, right? So
yeah.
a lot of podcasters already put them out in video, and they have that option. So this sounds like more of an option that if you want to, you can also do the video portion of it, and a lot of them do that. I mean, I get
Yeah.
podcasts that are
I
video,
would
so
also argue, for instance, that Joe Rogan is not particularly attractive as a person, but I still like to watch the interview just for the facial expressions and just for like, getting connecting maybe the putting the face to the name and so on and so forth. So a lot of podcasts, or like for instance the Lex Friedman podcast, he also just sits in a suit and talks to other people, but it's interesting sometimes to watch them, and maybe more engaging. So
It's
I
I
agree with Jennifer.
Oh, sorry. I know that like when I've been asked to do podcasts, that they say like do it on YouTube, because that's a very high value search engine, which it looks like this is actually going to surpass that on Spotify from that article. But I don't know. Does anybody remember the song "Video Killed the Radio Star"? Is it just me? I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Alexandra, I suggest you conserve your voice for your next article before you lost it.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, she wanted to share this article that I pinned on top. So when you're done with the Shopify, you can let her do it first before she lost her voice.
You can go to the next one and then circle back if you want to have a sip of water. Wall Street Journal says that the use of shopping bots that scour retail sites for hard to find items soared during the pandemic. One developer is selling such bots for $40 plus a $30 per month fee. Use of programs that scour retail sites for hard to find items has soared since the start of the pandemic. Shopping bots. When using a shopping bot to find hard to find items? Frustrated by empty store shelves, some parents are turning to a new kind of Santa's helper, the consumer-friendly shopping bot. Shopping bots scour retail sites to find out when sold-out items, get restocked, and automatically place orders. Long used by resellers looking to buy and flip high-demand goods for a profit, the technology is now being used by desperate holiday shoppers too, like people desperate for PlayStation 5s, etc. We're using tech to it's become table stakes. If you want to find stuff during the supply chain crunch, you're going to have to arm yourself, and then everyone has it, and then nobody has an advantage if everyone has it. It's an arms race. So the next one is the New York Times. It says Jay Last, a pioneer who founded Fairchild Semiconductor, which laid the technical, financial, and cultural foundation for Silicon Valley, dies at 92 years old. And the next one's from The Verge. And is JT here on stage? It's about Nreal Light review. We talked about the Nreal Light last week, about a week ago. And now the tech journalists have had a chance to play with it, so they're giving their first reviews. This one from The Verge says that the compact design and relatively affordable but limited device and app support, inconsistent user experience, and the mixed reality mode is patchy. Though through a glass darkly, Nreal has sold me on the appeal of watching TV with a pair of glasses, and I wish I could recommend buying the glasses that did it. Okay, next up from AP, or did Alexandra, did you want to do one?
Yeah, I will pin it for
Sure.
her. Alexandra, are you ready for your article?
Yeah, sure. I just
Yeah.
wanted to thank you. Sorry, I know this is pretty horrible, right?
Oh my God, Alexander, you must rest your voice.
I know. I don't. Yes, I know this is stupid. I recognize this is very stupid to do. But I will stop after this. I promise. But thank you guys for worrying. So this is this is just about El Salvador is raising $1 billion bond. Half of it is for is to buy Bitcoin, and the other half is to build infrastructure for Bitcoin. And the biggest concern I have a number of concerns. There's a lot of like, yay, this is wonderful, hooray, hooray, hooray. But there are some issues with this. One of them is their tax plan, which is a concern. They have this. You see this gentleman who is in front of this sign. I don't know if that's Bukele or not, but he's actually on a podium in front of a sign that's talking about like 0% income tax, 0% capital gains tax, 0%. Like all of the tax rates are zero. Which is going to be super problematic in the future, right? I mean, the government has to raise revenue if for no other reason than to pay off this bond.
The go
They're
So
going to be using a VAT tax for that, they claim. So that's one
that's
tax.
what that was my question was, is there going to be another form of capture or not, and is that form of capture going to be sufficient to offset the loss in these other avenues, because they still have the American dollar as the alternative currency. So they have, that was their national currency, was the US dollar. Now you can accept Bitcoin as well, but I do wonder if this is going to put an enormous amount of pressure on the US dollar purchases, because it's still being taxed the way it would have been ordinarily. So are they going to end up having to collect a huge amount of tax on dollar users as opposed to Bitcoin users, which is going to put a huge amount of stress on the systems? The other thing is, as we know, there's a huge amount of volatility in Bitcoin. This could be something where, if they're a buyer of last resort, which is what you are when you're basically building this whole fund that's going to fund all the activities in your country, they're going to be subject to a lot of risk of conversion loss because of this issue of their of the volatility in the market. And then the other thing is the people who are using it may have to either deal with a lot of volatility or thank you guys for so many of your wonderful suggestions. I know it sounds terrible, so thank you for all of the suggestions on how to help. But they'll either have to deal with, either having huge amounts of volatility in Bitcoin in order to avoid tax rates, or a huge amount of additional cost based on taxation for the US dollar. I don't know how this will play out in the long run, but it is something that I think we should watch as a concern. I am not I'm very for Bitcoin. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I just believe in facts. So there are many people that are going to argue that I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about or whatever. A lot of that is honestly, it's because, well, that's a whole long room we could have on why that exists, but that this is a real concern for their economy because they don't actually have enough underlying economic activity to support like this no tax um, uh, constraint that they're offering. Like this, that's because that's a new structure for them. The goods that they have don't necessarily have a high enough value. The goods that they're selling are not necessarily significant enough high value items that a VAT tax can compensate for all of that lost tax that they're proposing. I suspect that's going to change within the next couple of months. They're going to find that's not viable.
I agree with your comments, mostly, almost entirely. But what they're doing is pulling forward the present value of their geothermal energy and transforming that into Bitcoin, taking investment um, into a fund, $500 million US dollars, I think, or a billion, is it? 1 billion, sorry, per bond. And so they'll use that investment to make infrastructure investments. And then, yeah, you're right. It's a big question of whether the 10% VAT will cover kind of running costs. But the hope is that over time, that Bitcoin, the scarce asset, will continue to appreciate, and that will be the real source of revenue.
I think 10 years out, energy prices are going to take a real dive. So that kind of makes it interesting.
The one thing that I don't know, I mean, I haven't actually seen anyone discuss this, is they're building this Bitcoin city at the base of a volcano. I don't know how active Salvadorian volcanoes are. This seems to be not necessarily the place that I would choose to live necessarily, because that's what they're doing is they're harvesting that geothermal volcanic energy. But for that to be really viable and close to the surface, that means it has to be pretty active. So I don't know if there's anyone else who's scared of living like right next to an active volcano, but presumably, they have enough of a warning or something there. But that doesn't seem like, I mean, the way to get it most efficiently is when all of that energy is really close to the surface. That's not great. Just say.
Okay. Yeah, that
Well, it
was.
won't hurt. It won't hurt the Bitcoin because the Bitcoin is digital.
Yeah, I'm talking about people physically living next to a volcano.
I know, I know. I was making a joke, honey. I'm sorry.
And don't bring
I'd
don't
Okay,
bring negative
I'd laugh.
Maguire
You
there.
have you
I'd
have
laugh.
to let her win. Come on, she
Yep.
can't fight back now.
So if that's true, that the humans are,
that's sad but true.
but if the humans are risking their own lives to mine Bitcoin by being next to the volcano, at that point, it's almost like a parasite infection, like that Bitcoin is actually using its hosts, us, as its enablers for its own greater purposes.
Wow, another sci-fi movie plot right here.
Yeah.
But you don't have to, you can go. That's the whole thing. We're not yet like, slaves to the Bitcoin master, because you can choose not to live there and not be part of it. So as long as we have choice, I think it's okay. But if they start chaining
Voice for
all
now.
work,
We
Just a
don't know what
couple,
happens later.
just a couple other quick thoughts about this. I mean, this is kind of similar to how Singapore originally got off the ground, because that was kind of a swampy slum. And I've never been to this city, but I do know that they have a slum. So how is this government going to acquire the land? How are the people on that land going to be compensated? And are they going to be given other homes? This kind of thing. That's an interesting question.
It's a
You know,
great
I
question.
think if we added a couple of zeros and they were doing 100 billion of investing in this, it would probably be extremely material. Current number of zeros, I'm not sure it's going to have much of an impact, other than they're setting an example of a business model.
Okay, next up, WhatsApp privacy policy for European users will be reorganized to provide more information on the data it collects and how it is used after a major fine in the EU. The BBC article says WhatsApp privacy policy tweaked in Europe after a record fine. Yep. The governments are very, very interested in how WhatsApp is operating with regard to encryption and what they're doing with the data that they do have, etc. That's going to be interesting to watch. This whole encryption issue is going to get huge, 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 because when we met previously 10 hours ago, there were two articles. One was that how encryption is going to enable, the proliferation of pedophilia online and etc., and protect the pedophiles. And then one of the nearly next articles was how social networks, monetize your grandparents in their retirement homes through their data because it's not encrypted. So it's catch 22. If you encrypt, if the social networks, which Facebook is working to do, and they made their own headline today saying they anticipate to have it going in 2023. But if they do it, well, then they're helping the pedophiles. If they don't do it, then they're victimizing your elderly grandparents. So it's an interesting position that the press is putting Facebook and all the social media in, kind of how to do encryption in the best way possible. The next one is Royal, which wants to help musicians create and sell NFTs, share royalties with fans, and more. Raises $55 million following a $16 million seed round in August, which I remember when we read that article. Top
That's
celebrities.
Blouse Company, isn't it?
I don't.
DJ. I think he
Yes,
started that one, right?
that's right. Yes. Top celebrities and musicians have joined a $55 million fundraise in the up-and-coming NFT platform Royal. And I remember we brought in my buddy Ash, the other half of Avicii, in here to comment on that one. And he said that that's been all in the works for a very long time. The next one is SoftBank's Vision Fund, one of the world's biggest in tech investment funds, promotes 4 investors to managing partner. That's a lot of managing partners, including Lydia Jett, the first woman to hold the title, after Deep Nishar and others left. Yep.
do you think that that's a comment on the on Sun's ability to pick uh investments, or is that like a comment on him at all? Like, are they trying to comfort people by adding more people that are
Well, there
making
was,
decisions?
yeah, they had one managing director, which was Nishar, and he said he was going to leave by the end of the year. And there was an article recently stating that the reason that SoftBank struggles, with high turnover, is because the um, incentive structure, the financial incentive structure people aren't that happy about, essentially. And I guess it is what it is. That was I believe it was Bloomberg who wrote that article making that point. In this article, it says that Lydia Jett said that she didn't set out to tackle gender barriers, but that she recognizes the significance of adding more high-ranking women investors in an industry where they're rare. Female newcomers, quote, appreciate having senior women to look to and then try and model after, she said. I'm honored to be in that position. Almost half of the 41 investors in the Vision Fund has hired since the start of the fiscal year in April are women, a spokesperson said. Jet has partly focused on e-commerce during her SoftBank tenure, and her promotion is a signal of the sector's importance to the Vision Fund. Ventures such as South Korean shopping juggernaut Coupang, in which SoftBank was an early investor, number among the fund's biggest wins, helping Jet notch an internal average rate of return higher than other managing partner, according to numbers seen by Bloomberg. Jet serves on the Coupang board and has also backed retailers such as Fanatics, Flipkart, and Tokopedia, so she's killing it. SoftBank's other managing partner promotions include Vikas Parekh. Parekh is based in the US, where he helps oversee enterprise investing in the country and led SoftBank's restructuring of WeWork in 2019, as well as its 2016 buyout of chipmaker ARM. In China, Dennis Cheng, who led investments such as workout app Keep and grocery delivery Ding Dong Mai Kai, is also now managing partner. So is Sumer Janeja, who helped set up the Vision Fund's India office. The fund's investment in India and China have been both lucrative and fraught. In China, a regulatory crackdown has cast a pall on the tech industry. In India, SoftBank has invested in promising companies like logistics startup Delhivery and ride-hailing firm Ola, as well as OYO Hotels, which was and others. Although the Vision Fund has never had a female managing partner on the interior team, the chief people officer, Catherine Lenson, holds that title at SoftBank Investment Advisors. Okay, so the next one is global smartwatch shipments in Q3 2021. Samsung share rose to 17%, with Galaxy Watch 4 retaking number 2 behind Apple, whose share dropped 10% year over year. So Samsung is slowly catching up to the Apple Watch. Then the next one is Sword Health, which provides digital physical therapy, raises 163 million at a 2 billion valuation. Berlin-based Jenna AI, an open source startup that uses neural search to help users find information in unstructured data, raises $30 million. And that's a huge space, by the way, helping people structure their data so that it can be used by AIs. And that's one of the hardest parts about integrating AI into existing companies, is AIs need very structured data. And for the time being, that's a very manual process. So if you can find a way to kind of automate that's taking unstructured data into structured, usable data for AIs, that's a huge, huge, huge space. Texas, which has the most vulnerable power grid in the US, is attracting crypto miners with incentives, cheap power, and lax regulation. I have evidence to the contrary, which is our dear friend David Chang from Beijing, who nearly everyone on this stage knows very well. He joins us very regularly, and let's go ahead and ping him. And in fact, he's going to be in London next week, and he and I are talking through private messaging about meeting up. And David informed me in our last phone call that he was in Georgia, the American state, not the country, looking at a new mining facility, crypto mining facility, 200 miles outside of Atlanta, in the middle of nowhere, at the world's worst Chinese restaurant he was at while we were on the call, he said. And for those who do know David, you know he was managing the crypto mining for the Chinese crypto miners, and he helped relocate them to Texas weeks before it ever made any headlines. Weeks before the massive headlines, a month before the massive headline that China was ending crypto mining in China. And he sent us the photos of himself in Texas, where he's normally from Beijing. So we found that rather surprising. But he sent DMs to Cal Patel and myself saying, "Hey, I'm in Texas. Anyone you want me to meet here? And we're setting up crypto mines for all the Chinese crypto miners because we're moving everything to Texas." And indeed, that did happen weeks later. But I mean, so when the reason I say this is because in my most recent call with him, which was less than a week ago, he said that Texas is in fact recently working on new regulations that make it impossible for Chinese business owners to touch the power grid. And I said, is that related to, is that specifically aimed at crypto miners? And he said, not exactly. Nonetheless, that it's having that effect. And so this headline that we're reading here, that Texas, which has the most vulnerable power grid in the US, is attracting crypto miners with incentives, cheap power, and lax regulation. Those are true technically. It is attracting crypto miners. It does have the cheapest power. It does have lax regulation. However, one of those regulations is you can't be Chinese. You cannot.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
So
Tyler, a lot of these are being set
State
up through
is
third
American.
parties, so I wonder how they're tracking it. Because a lot, I mean, there's still more and more of the Chinese crypto miners are sending the equipment over here, and it's being, it's a data center, right? So it's got to be set up where they have power and the right physical conditions, right? So the right humidity, access to power, not going to have earthquakes and et cetera. It's got to be manned, and they're being set up in a lot of states, so and a lot through third parties. So it'll be interesting to see how they're going to implement that.
well, they're doing. I think it's really interesting. So Texas is both like trying to be forward looking and reactionary. It's got this weird dichotomy of culture. But one of the things, so a lot of this actually happened not because of the Chinese per se. It was really because of that thing last winter where everybody likes the cheap power because they don't have a power regulator intermediary, right? That kind of moderates the rate so that it doesn't fluctuate so much. So it could be higher than the lowest possible rate, but it'll be lower than the highest possible rate. That's what most power companies end up doing. But they don't have that. You could draw directly from the grid, and everybody got screwed when suddenly the power rates jacked up and the system broke, etc. So everybody freaked out about that, and now they're talking about bringing in regulations so it doesn't happen again, where people get multi-$1,000 power bills, and there's someone actually maintaining the grid that isn't the just like a state and local regulators, but which is it's not they don't do a good job, but the thing with China is so I think they have a bunch of different what do you call it a bunch of different there are a bunch of different kinds of regulations where states are trying to enact their own either pro or anti particular groups or something like that. And the issue that they have is if they say that the Chinese can't access their power grid, that might actually be interfering with immigration law and national and ethnicity. Like there's two different issues. One is it a group of people that are already governed by federal law that crowds out any sort of state regulation, and then the second one is, are they discriminating against people who because of their national origin, which is a protected class, which is a very hard thing to get through the Supreme Court. So if and when these regulations pass, I don't expect them to look like no Chinese can hold this, because the states don't have that right to say. So I think that it'll be really interesting to see how this happens, and if there's litigation that happens as a result. I've seen this happen in other states in other situations before, and it doesn't usually end in favor of the states.
okay, for that. Next up, Singapore-based buy now pay later Pace raises $40 million. San Francisco-based e-commerce fulfillment and technology startup Deliverr, double R, raises $250 million, led by Tiger Global at a $2 billion valuation. Ericsson, here in Stockholm, to buy cloud communication company Vonage for $6.2 billion. Expects the deal to close in the first half of 2022. And Hi Mama, which makes an app for childcare centers with scheduling, daily reports, parental communication, and more, raises $70 million. And there's a profile of Manal Al-Sharif, a technologist whose social media activism pressured Saudi Arabia to let women drive and who now informs people about digital rights. And Apple's self-service repair, likely created to ward off regulatory pressure, may increase repairability of its own devices and spur an industry-wide change. Yep, and a whole lot of $50 screwdrivers. Very specialized Apple hex wrenches, no doubt. If they've got a $19 cleaning cloth, I'm very curious to see how much they'll charge for the tools to fix your own iPhone. And then, as you covered previously, Alexandra, El Salvador plans to build a Bitcoin city, initially funded by a $1 billion Bitcoin bond, with a $500 million earmarked to build mining infrastructure at the base of the volcano using hydro or geothermal power, and another $500 million to buy more Bitcoin. And lastly, MIT Tech Review, a very good publication, says there's an investigation showing how Facebook and Google fund misinformation globally by paying millions of dollars in ad revenue to the operators of clickbait pages. Yes, technically, misinformation, with only notable exceptions, is not illegal. And clickbait pages monetize through ad networks like Google. And hence the interesting topic for debate here. Should Google verify every website that they allow to use their ad network? All, say, 50 billion websites. Should they be in the business of kind of moral policing the content on the pages that use their ad network? Because those pages are monetizing, and maybe they need tools like they have on YouTube where they demonetize certain videos. Maybe eventually they could demonetize certain blog posts or websites temporarily, freeze, as they do in YouTube as well, where they will demonetize certain YouTube accounts. They could demonetize certain, but I think if they did that on websites, for example, if you're running a WordPress website and Google's ad network says, well, we're not going to run ads on your website, then you would go to another ad network that would pay you. And that's probably why Google doesn't police those websites, because those websites have other alternatives. If Google turns off the financial, money flow. So, but to say that Facebook and Google are funding misinformation globally by paying millions of dollars in ad revenue to operators of clickbait pages, no, they're paying billions of dollars, but that's still a drop in the bucket. And so, is it Google? Do we blame Google for these clickbait sites? Or, for example, even mainstream media is writing really egregious clickbait headlines in 2021. Do we blame Google and Facebook for that? It's a really interesting topic to consider. So that is the main headlines. And now we get into the stuff we've all been waiting for, which is the tweets that everybody's sending in. But before we get to the tweets, let's do a quick refresh, Cheryl, and see.
Yeah.
There's a new one. GoDaddy?
Yep.
In a
Yep.
filing, GoDaddy says a third party gained access. That's internal code for they got hacked. A third party gained access to information from up to 1.2 million managed WordPress accounts, including customer numbers and admin passwords. Oh, ouch. And now when they have your admin passwords, that means there's a very specific technical term called pwned, which means you've now been pwned when your admin password has been taken over. In disclosures to the SEC, the web registrar GoDaddy and hosting company has revealed that it has discovered it has been hacked. Yeah. I love the euphemism of third party gained access. We've been third party gained accessed. No, you've
Well,
been.
that means it wasn't internal because you could literally have somebody internally who just wants to cause trouble. So they're just saying it's a third party. It wasn't one of our
Sure.
employees. That's all.
Okay, sure.
I just to Jennifer also asking her like what's in that WordPress data, like what kind of a risk is that, and the like what do you have in a WordPress that's a big risk? Also, it's interesting that they sent this to the SEC, but like I don't think that there was a separate press release.
Well, I've had WordPress accounts on GoDaddy, so I can probably answer that. So basically, your risk is that somebody could post something on your website that makes you look bad. Stuff that you would never post. What troll, troll your own blog essentially. I mean, that would probably be the biggest risk. And also, they could do a lot of damage to stuff that you already have there. If you've got, because if your blog is already set up, let's say maybe with a certain picture and a certain style. I mean, they could mess up your whole account and you'd almost have to start over from scratch, so yeah.
Yeah, WordPress is super vulnerable. It's been known to be a super vulnerable site, and if you're gonna just to be aware of that. And as you said, they can get your content, anything that you're storing there. Wouldn't it be your user base? And go in and there's a lot going on right now where they're hacking media, so influencers, et cetera, and screwing up your site and maybe holding you. If it's a big site, they could again use ransomware and hold you for ransom. But WordPress has been known for a while to be super vulnerable.
But don't GoDaddy also have an e-commerce solution based on WordPress? So the implication here is you gain admin access and then redirect payments or shopping carts to third-party sites.
It
I never
says
made it mine, so I wouldn't know. My stuff was free, so I'll leave that to somebody else.
let's
Is
see.
that
A
WooCommerce?
lot of the vulnerabilities come from the when you set it up for the first time. There's like the default settings. If you just leave them default, then yeah, you'll be vulnerable um to certain like script kiddies or whatever. But if you do something as simple as changing the like say the link to where you log in to gain admin access, that thwarts like pretty much a bunch of common attacks that could be done on a
Yeah.
WordPress site.
A lot of people set things up and don't change these standard settings, and that's a huge issue. And again, a lot of we look at this and go, how could you not do that? But again, entities across the board, are not up to speed, and so these vulnerabilities exist in a lot of places. In WordPress, you can change the admin access. You can add different configuration and tools on top. I'm not techie; I don't know what those are. I can find out, but again, I do know that it's been, of note that WordPress is highly hackable. And as you're saying, I would put it as part of the big push on social media influencers right now, because they are small businesses. Like if you've got a business going on your WordPress site, that you are again a business, and 5,000 here, 10,000 there is times 100 people that they got is worthwhile.
Yeah, I run an e-commerce business on my blog, and it was hacked 6 months ago. And yeah, they essentially did do some, like, they changed the wordings, they changed my picture, which I kind of feel is a bit weird, because like, why go to all that effort to hack you and then spend? I feel like the risk and the reward is sort of not really there. But one of the biggest things is they can redirect, as Jonathan pointed out, they can redirect your if you've got like affiliate links, and you've got associated money, like accounts attached to those, and they can redirect it. So it's definitely an annoyance, and can make you, if you're a small business, lose out on a lot of revenue for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can pay with WordPress. I just looked it up. You
Mhm.
can.
So the next tweet is from Willie in the audience via Engadget. It says Uber Eats users in Ontario, Canada can now buy cannabis through Uber Eats, but orders are for pickup only. Users need to search for cannabis and confirm they're of legal age. And Joe Williams in the audience sent in this one that Rolls-Royce's all-electric airplane smashes speed records with 387 miles per hour top speed 2 months after its maiden flight. And Saudamini
Wait, is this that new Concorde type thing? That's,
no, not at all. No, the Concorde's
I mean,
going
it's
well over 1,000 miles an hour. Yeah,
no, but this is the new one with the Rolls Royce that they're gonna. I think it's coming out in a couple of years, but it's gonna. It's I heard an interview with the founder, and they're expecting really big things, right? I mean, it's gonna be super expensive to travel, but it's cheaper than having your own chartered jet.
sure. I love this next one from Saudamini from IndianExpress.com. Returning India's missing pets with facial recognition, one dog at a time. It's an app that will soon allow you to find a lost puppy's home using just your smartphone. Here's how it aims to make things easier
Yeah.
for pet families. Facial recognition for your pets. That's genius. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bust out the our most prestigious accolade here, which is our clapometer. We did it, everybody. We figured it out. Thank God the entrepreneurs did it yet again. We've now solved one of the world's biggest problems with lost pets using facial recognition for pets. But then the question turns into how that might be used against, all of the ethics of facial recognition. But those people might change their minds now that they know they might be able to keep their pets.
But
So,
isn't there? Don't you need to put the chip in your pets? I mean, dogs and cats here we're required to, you know,
yep,
implant that.
that's a
So
hardware solution. Why not use a software solution like facial recognition?
Does the pet need
but
to
if
have an
they
identity?
yeah, but if you don't have camera at some places, you can buy
Wait,
them.
wait, wait. Every smartphone has a camera.
But
Does
if you
the
Yeah,
have the
so
yeah?
chip,
there
so
is
it's
a
like an AirTag. You can track your
there's
pet everywhere.
a new use for all those Instagram posts for my pets and dogs.
No, my question is, does the pets need to register their identity?
Yeah,
Yes,
you can
sure.
do it in 1 second at your house.
Like in your house, okay, like in Francine's house, her dog is called Maggie McGuire, right? But if someone stole her, I mean, took her pet and then called another person, do they need to register the name?
You mean dog kidnapping?
Yeah, lost. Yeah, this is lost and found, right?
Yeah,
So if someone
that
kidnapped the
happens sometimes.
dog,
Yeah.
Well, next thing you know, they'll be running facial
so
recognition against piles of
yeah,
poop that weren't picked up.
yeah. So how do you know that dog
No, they're
belongs to?
doing DNA
How
on
can you
those
tell that
ones.
They
dog
They
belongs
do.
to
are.
you? Is
So
it
They
we
the
do it.
observation? That's my question.
Isn't it about like taking dog's picture and then maybe your dog is lost and somebody shares the picture just like, okay, so this person is lost and people who are maybe in the vicinity and they find that same dog, they can scan the picture or take the picture and then match it. And then they
We're
can share
next
the
door,
address
and they
that, okay,
post
your
every.
dog is over there, 2 blocks over.
So do you need to register your dog now, worldwide? No, right? To the
No, why
owner?
registration? Just the picture, Cheryl.
No, I know. But how do you prove that the dog belongs to you?
I think
Because of the,
Yeah,
there's
that's why
probably
I
oh,
said chip implant.
there's
well,
probably
all those selfies would be proof enough that, okay, look at my account. It's filled with my dog pictures. I mean, that's my dog.
No.
no. I mean, I think that's actually the point is that they have you basically have a like a registry of you and your dog that you take with your dog at home. And then if your dog runs
Yeah.
off and somebody takes a picture, then they match it in the registry, on online registry. But and honestly, there's a problem because the people have a microchip, but they don't update the address or things like that. But I think it would be good also to find out if someone abandoned dogs or something like that. But also, you should use it for like Alzheimer's patients, or like we get in LA, you get like it's almost an Amber Alert, but it's for like older adults who are missing, and often like they're wandering or something like that, and trying to find them is really difficult. So I I hope that they try to do that also with older adults or other people who may not necessarily be able to find their way home. Same with kids or whatever. Like I know registries are a bad and dangerous thing, but I mean, I kind of feel like for people who need to find their way home and either don't know where it is or can't do that physically or something like that, or like a dog can't talk, then maybe that would help.
Well, the good part is once you have scanned your dog's face, you could bring your dog with you into the metaverse.
That's
So you need to
I would
prepare
like
a
it.
glass for your
You have
dog
to
as well.
cuddle. You can cuddle your dog in the metaverse. Then.
Yes.
So
And you can
Ray-Bans and
dress
that's
him
Prada.
up whatever way you like because normally they
So do
don't
you
like to
need to
dress
pick
up.
pick up the dog poop in the metaverse?
Have matching tails.
Well, you only have to pick up the poop if somebody can tie you to that dog through the blockchain. So it's
Oh, wow.
There should be a scoreboard
good.
for who
Very
picks up the most
interesting.
poop.
Ether scan dog poop for sure.
DNA analysis.
Yeah, no, they do. Aren't certain areas implementing this where they want people to register their dogs so that if they pick up the poop and the DNA matches? And honestly, around I'm in Marin and it's a nightmare.
I
yeah,
mean, hey,
that's
this
I
the
forget what
I
some
city.
think it's a
state
good solution
require.
for people who don't pick up.
Well, I
I
don't know about
believe
facial
it's
recognition, but I could. Oh, go ahead.
I believe it's Zurich that is doing DNA analysis on dog poop to find the users.
It's
Kudos. Good job.
it's here in LA. I have an in-law that lives in a building where they have to register their dogs, and then if you don't pick up, they'll identify your dog, and it's I don't even know what to say about it. I have a lot of things to say about it, but none of them are edited for television.
No, I think it's way overboard. And if people would just do what they're supposed to do, I mean, this is so much like resources going towards something that is just irritating.
I
You raise
mean,
a great
hey,
question.
this is
Will
Well,
there?
in my subdivision, there's a rule: if you don't pick up and somebody knows, you can report them. And yeah, so those rules are there for cleanliness and
uh, I mean, on the county level, depending on what your state is, that's where the laws with animals are actually held at, is on this on the local level, and then the state, of course, has their own thing. So you have to check to see what your county or province says about dogs. I can tell you where I live as far as the poop thing is concerned. That's more about the subdivision and the housing and stuff. But all animals are supposed to be registered in the county, along with being chipped, as well as they have to have their rabies validated as
Hmm.
well. So it's
Same
all
here.
part of that. And there is an app that I actually helped build with my team that actually updates and notifies the owners who are registered that it's time for them to get their pets re-registered with the county. Along with, and then there's I think they just introduced after I left, you can put a picture of your animal as part of that app, and there's one, oh, and it lets you know about free stuff too, because not everybody can afford to re-register their animal. So it's a full, like one of those full community apps.
Okay, next up is from JT that Huawei launches VR glasses and headset. XR Today reports the latest extended reality news from around the globe, including virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. The Huawei VR. And is JT on stage at the moment?
I am on stage. I just had to hop off for a little bit. I found this article very late, so I have to still dig through it. But just from a very high level competitive, landscape, it's very important that we we recognize a new competitor in the space, especially Huawei, which is a major, company, at least in the from what I know, the cell phone side, right? And now we see a VR headset coming to into the marketplace. And so I just had to dig through this. I just found out the article. But yeah, I'm surprised.
And then you have another one about hand tracking, Ultraleap.
Yeah, another one that I had to dig through. It seems like they have a 82 million investment, which is very huge, and hand tracking is one of the, I guess, the most difficult, not the most difficult, but one of the difficult things in at least VR, being able to translate that data into things like avatars or just like typical hand gestures and movements and controlling and anything related to VR.
Yeah, because it's not going to be easy. You're going to need that when you're picking up your digital poop in VR. The accurate hand tracking, your digital dog poops. So otherwise, it's going to look very awkward.
And the haptic feedback.
Yeah, and the
I have a question. Is
yeah.
the app, I don't know, there's an app called Immersive, and the app Immersive, which lets you use turn your home into your office or whatever, it has the hand tracking, like the keyboard and all that stuff. So is that the same technology or is it something different?
I don't. JT, do you know?
No, I have to dig into this article. This one was also late, so once I have an update, I'll share that with you.
Okay. And then JT, I don't think you and I had a chance to talk about the biggest news headline in the space recently. I think, tell me if I'm wrong, the news about Facebook's gloves that were announced, and then there was a company that showed that it appeared that Facebook has directly hijacked their innovation. Are you familiar with that article from late last week?
Yeah, I came across it. Facebook has a research lab, Facebook Reality Labs, and they're constantly doing prototyping. So the VR headsets that you normally see being leaked out, they have like probably more than like 20 iterations. And some of the photos that you see, they're all like connected with all these wires and like tubes, and you have like all these haptic things that are working on. But the whole controversy between whether they're stealing their technology, right? I don't want to comment on that because um, I don't know, possibly I might want to work for Facebook in the future, and I know this is all being recorded and stuff like that. But it's very interesting that they're getting into this space because obviously haptics is something that is part of the immersive space, bringing the actual reality of what you experience in your everyday life. It has to do with feel. That's one of the major components of realism, and so I'm not surprised that they're looking into this kind of technology in haptics. So yeah, that's all. That's all I can say. Sorry.
No worries. So, on a similar issue, Sonos, the audio hardware company, although they're doing a lot of software as well, Sonos has a big lawsuit against Google, and that lawsuit is getting closer scrutiny by the ITC. And it says Sonos claims that Google learned of Sonos's technology under the guise of working partnership to integrate Google Play Music into Sonos's products, but instead Google used the patented ideas in its home and Chromecast systems and Pixel phones and laptops. So the old switcheroo. The U.S. Trade Agency is taking a closer look at Sonos's claims that Google infringed patents for home audio systems and is considering whether to shut some Google smart home devices, phones, and laptops out of the U.S. market. The International Trade Commission, ITC, said it would review part of the judge's findings that Google infringed 5 Sonos patents and cleared product redesigns of any violation. Both companies asked the agency to review aspects of the judge's findings that went against them. Specifically, the commission said it would review whether products accused of infringing 2 of the patents are quote unquote articles that infringe at the time of importation. The commission said it won't reveal remaining issues in the judge's determination and will consider a possible remedy, which could mean an import ban. A final decision is scheduled to be issued on January 6th. Sono said the notice means that the administrative law judge's finding of a violation will stand. We are pleased that the commission will be affirming the ruling that all 5 Sonos patents at issue are valid and that Google infringes all 5 of those patents. We also look forward to engaging further with the commission on the details of the remedy to which we are entitled and pursuing our case in district court. Google denied using Sonos' technology, saying, "We compete on the quality of our products and the merits of our ideas. We disagreed with the preliminary ruling and will continue to make our case in the review process." So next one is from Poppy. This one via Reuters. And it says, greed is outpacing fear in world markets. And that's what's making the markets go up. So according to Goldman Sachs CEO, David Solomon, who, by the way, is a hell of a DJ. I attended a party where David Solomon was the DJ, believe it or not, on a boat here in Stockholm. And that was my buddy Ash's party. And
Solomon is
Yeah.
David Solomon
From
plays.
from he must have
He's a
gone to the
musician.
metaverse to pick up the poop.
Yeah, no, he was going to say David Solomon's an accomplished musician as
David
well.
Solomon, yeah.
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
not.
Okay, we need a facial recognition now.
Did you find Tyler?
Oh, welcome
I'm here.
back.
Did my
You
mic jump?
lost.
I cut out.
Yeah,
Okay,
you went
sorry.
to the
Yeah, you cut
metaverse.
out for about
I
10
went into the
seconds.
metaverse.
But I
Okay,
Go
completed
back.
your sentence, Tyler, because I
Yeah.
knew what you were going to say. But David Solomon is also an accomplished musician, right?
I was gonna say DJ. I went to a party that David Solomon was the DJ, in fact, and it was here in
Is he
Stockholm.
good?
Yeah, he wasn't bad, honestly. Far better than you would think. Um, and he's quite charismatic, but behind the wheels. It was my friend Ash, who I have brought in here many times, throws an annual event and here in Stockholm called Brilliant Minds, and we had Obama was the guest last year, one of the many guests, and then he met Greta Thunberg backstage, along with John Kerry, who's kind of the U.S. Leader for climate issues under Biden, former Secretary of State, who himself was a lovely person at the party. And David highlighted his DJ skills. It was quite impressive. Anyway, he makes a very interesting point. Greed is outpacing fear. And that is one very interesting way to think of how the markets work. It's fear versus greed. And when greed's winning, markets go up. And when fear's winning, markets go down. He says, I think markets generally, when I step back and I think about my 40-year career, there's been periods of time when greed has far outpaced fear. We are in one of those periods of time. We were in one of those periods of time, and generally speaking, my experience says that, those periods are not long-lived. Something will rebalance. It will bring a little bit more perspective, and given it feels like inflation is running above trend, chances are interest rates will move up, and that will take some of the exuberance out of certain markets. Okay, next, well, let me retweet that out for those who like to follow on the Twitter account. And next one is from Nalormi, that NVIDIA's CEO believes the metaverse will save companies billions of dollars by reducing wastefulness and increasing efficiency. Well, he's a bit biased. He's making the chips that will kind of enable this to some degree. The chipmaker NVIDIA is a vocal supporter of the metaverse, saying that embracing it will ultimately save companies billions of dollars. Speaking to CNBC's Jim Cramer on Friday, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said that the next iteration of the internet will enable companies to reduce wastefulness and increase efficiency. Quote, we waste a whole bunch of things to overcompensate for the fact that we don't simulate, he said, referring to the metaverse as an omniverse. Quote, we want to simulate all factories in metaverses, in this omniverse. We want to simulate plants in the omniverse. We want to simulate the world power grids in the omniverse. Huang explained that by simulating certain real-world objects, businesses could decrease the amount of waste produced and save money. That's the reason why the economics are so good for companies, he said. They're willing to invest a small amount of money to buy into this artificial intelligence capability, but what they save is hopefully hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. NVIDIA appears to be benefiting from the increased discourse over what the metaverse is and how brands can get involved. Last week, the California-based company reported record revenue of $7.1 billion, up 50% from a year earlier. This includes gaming revenue of $3.2 billion, up 42% from a year earlier. Thank you for that one, Nalormi. The next one, also from Nalormi, very interesting one from Wired. The headline says, "The future of digital assistants is queer. AI assistants continue to reinforce sexual stereotypes, but queering these devices could help reimagine their relationship to gender altogether." And I remember fondly reading an article that made, I believe, a similar point about the question as to why is Siri and Alexa female? And it's because they tested this in labs and they found out that people thought that the femaleization of robots made them more trustworthy and reliable and believable, etc. So the question then becomes, well, we don't have to genderize the AI assistants like Alexa and Siri, and they don't have to be male or female. They can be, anywhere on the spectrum. So it's a really interesting concept. But I imagine that the reality is people will tailor the AI assistant that they talk with, and I believe it'll be a very common to monetization strategy for many celebrities like Samuel L. Jackson or Morgan Freeman or people who have Snoop Dogg, for example, might be able to
Yeah,
do.
they already have the voices in there already. So I mean, you can
Yeah,
change her voice already, just like you can change Siri's voice to
Yeah,
from
both
being female
male and
to
female.
Australian. So I don't understand what's
Yeah,
the
I think that's. I always assumed that the voice was a female because people found it less threatening
pleasing.
to ask questions to.
You can
All right.
change it. You can change it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can change it, but I figure it's so mine has an
yeah, but
Australian accent for
Mine
Siri.
is male.
yeah, but
Yeah.
the changes today are limited, in I think in the future they'll be unlimited in terms of
I
Tyler,
think
act.
can I can I can I tie together?
Yeah,
Alex
Can I try and
already provided some celebrity voices previously.
Yeah. Sam Jackson is on
Yeah.
Alexa, and I forgot who else.
The reason they make, when you hear pilot alarms in the cockpit, the reason they were traditionally female voices, the alerts and the warnings, because men were more likely to listen to a female voice they found versus a male voice. So there might be something there. Actually, men and women were more
yeah,
likely to
can I
listen
try and
to a
tie
female.
together your last two articles, Tyler, because I think they're intimately connected. So the CEO of a chip maker saying that the metaverse is going to save billions of dollars, and this subsequent article about personalizing communication. I think there's a really tight connection between those two, and that is that the ability to teach people new skills quickly in a multisensory environment like the metaverse is going to become table stakes. I think it's going to take a long time for that to be implemented at scale effectively across verticals, but a lot of what will accelerate the success of his claim is how much we personalize the metaverse experience to the learning style of the individual and the receptiveness and outcomes on an individual basis. So, the kinds of things like personalizing which avatars and which voices you're most likely to learn from best in the metaverse, given the infinite array as you described, is going to be one of the critical, in my view, one of the critical aspects of how quickly we can leverage the upskilling that becomes possible in the metaverse and achieve those savings as projected on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next up. Well, in this article, it says AI assistants continue to reinforce sexist stereotypes. Querying these devices could help reimagine their relationship to gender altogether. This November, the Smithsonian's Futures Festival, featuring innovations that are set to change the world, will include a familiar face, or rather voice, named Q, introduced in 2019 as the first genderless AI voice, is a human voice for use in digital assistants specifically created to be gender ambiguous. Q was designed to start a conversation around why we gender technology when technology has no gender to begin with, says Ryan Sherman, one of the Q's co-creators to design the voice. A team of linguists, sound engineers, and creatives collaborated with non-binary individuals and sampled different voices to land on a sound range they felt had the potential to disrupt the status quo and represent non-binary people in the world of AI. When Q was announced several years ago, it was hailed as the genderless digital voice of the world needs right now, and an acknowledgement of the harm of feminizing assistants, which perpetuates misogynistic stereotypes of women as submissive and obedient. It won praise from the UN report on gender divides in digital skills, and the same report warned that nearly all of these assistants have been feminized in name, in voice, in patterns of speech, and in personality. The title of the report, I'd blush if I could, was the answer Siri originally provided to users who called it a bitch. Nowadays, Siri simply replies, "I won't respond to that." In another sign of progress, earlier this year, Apple eliminated the default female voice for Siri, now including the option for a male voice and allowing US users to choose from a set of voices referred to as voices 1, 2, and 3. Similarly, Google Assistant and Cortana currently let users select a male voice, further proving that companies do respond to public pushback about their products.
Tyler, I actually worked on Q when I was at one of my former employers, and it's interesting the amount of work that goes into that, and getting, because it has to be a gender neutral sounding voice and still sound like a real voice, authentic. There's just a lot that goes into that.
Tyler, I'm just wondering what that will sound like. I mean, I used to be an actor, so I used to do like all different types of voices or accents. Like, what does it sound like? And is there a danger that you're still going to offend somebody because they're going to be like, well, that doesn't sound like a gender neutral voice?
Here we go.
Hi, I'm Q, the world's first genderless voice assistant. Think of me like Siri or Alexa, but neither male nor female. I'm created for a future where we are no longer defined by gender, but rather how we define ourselves. My voice was recorded by people who neither identify as male nor female, and then altered to sound gender neutral, putting my voice between 145 and 175 hertz, a range defined by audio researchers. But for me to become a third option for voice assistants, I need your help. Share my voice with Apple, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. And together we can ensure that technology recognizes us all. Thanks for listening. Q.
Reminds me of
Disturbing.
Ladyboy.
Sounds ghastly.
Actually, I
Really
think
Yeah,
pretty
it
ghastly.
good.
sounds
Not
like
bad.
a
So
Not bad.
mixture of
PC,
Like it
Shelley.
was like in
male and
there,
I don't
female
and
know.
you
It
could
voice.
really
sounded
tell the
like, I don't know if
difference.
y'all
Like
watch Star Trek.
average.
I mean, it just reminded me of Seven of Nine, and then also the actual Q from Star Trek.
Kind of sounds similar
Um,
to my grandmother.
yeah,
Sounds
I
crap.
mean, I think you just choose what you want. I
I
mean,
liked it.
I don't know.
I think that
I
it's
mean,
a
it's
good,
fine.
yeah, it provides you an option. That's a great idea. But if you,
Yeah,
unified under this one, that is not.
yeah. Just give us options. That's where I am. Just
Okay, so next one is from Saudamini. That you remember the headline from 2 weeks ago that Amazon announced that in the UK it would no longer be accepting Visa credit cards. Now the headline today says Visa's chief financial officer is confident of resolving the fee. Well, they also blamed it on fees, and now Visa's CFO is confident of resolving fee battle with Amazon. Amazon said on Wednesday that it would stop taking payments from Visa credit cards in Britain starting mid-January. I think it was January 22nd. And now Visa says, we think we can fix that. If it's about the fees, yeah, we don't negotiate fees. But if it means losing, $1 billion a year, I think we might be able to have
I
a
told you
workaround.
it's just a decision they have to make.
We hope to get to the point where our relationship with Amazon goes back to being what it was, they said. We resolved these issues in the past, and I believe we will resolve them in the future. It is our expectation that there will be a resolution so that UK consumers are not impacted. And that tells you how powerful Amazon is. That in
Please
the
take me
battle
back.
in the battle between Amazon and Visa, Amazon's like, I think you need us more than we need you. And Visa's
I'm
happy to.
sorry, I won't ever do it again.
Well, that just demonstrates the power of Amazon, folks. So, I'm going to leave.
Tyler, I
Yes.
just had a thought. It could be, Amazon is keen to, and they are promoting their own payment solutions. Maybe this is all about general over the counter payment rates, so acquiring rates. So Amazon uses its muscle to get better acquiring rates and then offer those rates to retailers across the UK, so bricks and mortar retailers.
Yeah, but I think it was also interesting timing wise, considering the partnership between Amazon and a firm, which is the Buy Now Pay Later by Max Levchin. Now that that's in place, why not do a firm instead of a Visa credit card? Because the user, the Amazon shopper, can be given the option to use a firm Buy Now Pay Later instead of using a Visa card. And ostensibly, Amazon will get more data if the user chooses the Buy Now Pay Later through a firm than through the Visa credit card.
So that could be a reason. But if you think about it, let's say you want to offer an over-the-counter payment solution. And remember, I worked in this space for a couple of years with Payzone, which is one of the I think it is the dominant now over-the-counter retail payment, convenience payment provider in the UK. The big question for them was always acquiring rates. Could you get a better interchange rate, acquiring rate from your payments provider? And of course, if Amazon can basically couple a payment solution, contactless payment solution or EPOS solution, and offer retailers a better processing or card acceptance rate, then why would anybody go to any of the existing providers that are out there today? You would go and you would take the solution from Amazon, which then means that they take over the retail payment space because they're offering lower rates than the competition, and then can layer on the additional services that you're talking about, both to the retailers and also to their consumer customers.
Okay. Anyone with a hot headline to share, or we can save it for next time? We're just 16 minutes
I'm
over.
still
Tyler,
stuck over the whole GoDaddy WordPress hacking. I'm sitting here like, change passwords like to
Yeah.
facility client. So thanks for that
Uh,
headline.
so Tyler,
Adele,
I sent you a
oh,
couple of good ones.
Go ahead, Ken.
did
So
y'all already go over Adele requested that Spotify remove the shuffle
You,
button?
no, I think
Oh,
he's referring to,
shuffle
to,
option?
to the dog facial recognition dog poop one.
Oh, no. I was asking, did y'all go over that one that Adele
yeah,
requested
Yes, we
to
did. Yes.
Spotify?
Yeah.
Okay, then.
What's up, Ken?
yeah. So I sent you one. There's one or two I sent that I thought were pretty interesting. There was an article from the LA Times how the metaverse has already arrived in theme parks, and it's pretty detailed. I'm not gonna, you should just like retweet it, and then people could read it. Tyler, what happens? People generally hit paywalls because I have a lot of subscriptions. So like I have a subscription to the LA Times, so I won't hit a paywall. But if you
Right.
retweet something from the LA Times, they're gonna hit a paywall, right?
I don't know. I've got it open right here. Want to glimpse our metaverse future? Theme parks are already on the case. At Disneyland and Universal Studios Japan, AR and video games tech projects show the metaverse won't be limited to VR goggles, how physical and digital worlds may merge. The promise of augmented reality so far has largely been just that, promises of a future seen through filters for our mobile phone apps and simple games that place characters with a little movement on our camera screens. But if the whole metaverse thing, the concept of a persistent, evolving online world that we don't log into as much as live inside, is ever going to take off, we are going to need more in our theme parks, which are increasingly centered on the concepts of games and play, may offer a glimpse of where the future is heading. In the not so distant future, Universal Studios Hollywood will import a Mario Kart themed ride from Japan that is centered on augmented reality, an attraction designed to create the illusion that we're interacting with virtual objects and characters, unlike most AR enhanced mobile phone apps, where the images are tailored to an individual screen. The use of visor-like glasses will allow all guests on the ride to engage with the digital creations in real time. And earlier this month, the Walt Disney Company quietly announced that it is in conversations with Illumix, a Redwood City, California-based AR firm that has been rooted in games and e-commerce, but is quickly expanding into physical realms. Illumix Tech offers a range of experiences, including entertainment that merges physical and digital effects, as well as more personally grounded character interactions. One of the demo previewed by Illumix as part of the experimental tech program, Disney Accelerator, just happened to show some over-the-top vintage cartoon-inspired interactions with Mickey's Toontown, blah, 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 blah. So it makes sense that Disney would be at the forefront of this, of course, and Disney also has this kind of fun relationship with Apple and Pixar, and Pixar itself uses a really interesting proprietary format, which Apple itself is using for its AR, because I have a friend who's in that space, and we had dinner 2 nights ago, and
And
it spelled out the whole thing for me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and just to expand on what you said about having sort of like this duality strategy between not only a virtual metaverse but also a physical on location metaverse as well. It's something that Nike Land is sort of
Oh, right.
hinting to as a best practice because they
Sure.
have their metaverse in Roblox, but they're
Uh-huh.
also, as part of their strategy, they have something coming up during December where if you go to the Nike House of Innovation here in New York City, you're able to launch this Snapchat AR filter that pretty much like transforms your entire environment into like this metaverse kind of world. So you basically will be able to see like the avatars, the same like fields and courts, and all those cool things that you would normally see in Roblox, but now in your physical location. So taking that same concept and what Disney could do is pretty much create their own metaverse in the virtual space, whether that's through a gaming platform or in VR. And then at their physical location, obviously, recreate some or enhance the reality, as Niantic CEO likes to say, enhance the reality with on-base location AR content that is around you, either wayfinding or just like, cool visual effects because they're like the masters of visual effects, and you take this whole concept and you expand it into their ecosystem, which obviously they own like so many IP, and we discussed this yesterday in my other show. They like have ESPN, they have Marvel, and then you could think of like all the opportunities that arise from that, from a merchandising standpoint, an IP standpoint, and licensing that off into avatars and merchandise and wearables and et cetera, et cetera. So the flywheel cycle sort of starts to like spin, and they're sort of like they're sort of like in a good position to really leverage the metaverse than any other company that I can think of, just given the grand scale and the global scale that they have as a brand. But yeah, just want to make those two connections that you alluded to.
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
JT, this is John. Can I ask you a question about that? Because with a recent announcement of the Winklevoss brothers trying to ensure more of a open modular architecture versus the walled garden of Facebook, and vis-a-vis Disney and Pixar creating a mixed physical virtual experience, do you have an insight into a taxonomy of how there will be sort of natural cleavages between um, open modular architectures, specifically if it's going to be integrated with a physical experience, which Disney's experienced, in doing already, um, wouldn't that condition sort of an impedance mismatch for interoperability between a combined virtual physical reality versus a pure virtual reality? What are your thoughts on whether on how achievable a um, a, a modular architecture with full interoperability could be across all these different use cases?
That's a great question. So I attended AWE 2 weeks ago, and I had the chance to look at this demo by Eighth Wall, which is like the leading WebXR, I should say, company. And so what they were demoing out was something called the Reality Engine, which allows you to experience an XR, experience a metaverse in your mobile device, in your laptop, but also on your VR headset in real time, and you're able to share that experience with people across the globe. So you're able to have like this intra-operability, but across the web. And so that technology that they're developing, which they already developed, if that becomes more mainstream, then you have like at least the interoperability from a siloed perspective. So like if Disney decides to team up with Eighth Wall, for example, they can have that sort of that ecosystem, that intra-operability. The concept that, they if they were to design sort of a metaverse within that framework that a competing organization is going to come into their ecosystem, right, with their avatar and their IP, and somehow those two things are going to play nice together. Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon. The frameworks, the protocols, those will exist. I think those are going to be built out first before you have any platform like Apple or Facebook playing nice together. And when money obviously comes into play, you know that from game theory, that there's no cooperation here. So at least, and to expand upon that, with the prompt that you initially brought up, the Winklevosses, they're trying to go into the decentralized side. I don't see the decentralized side and the centralized platforms playing nice either until the decentralized side gets some form of VR component integrated into their ecosystem, into the block, until they get blockchain integrated into a VR headset and they get a VR manufacturer company to play in partnership with those kind of players in the decentralized side, like CryptoVoxels, Decentraland, whatever other platform that the Winklevoss create. You're not going to have full immersion. You're going to have really just mobile and desktop, video games, which is not what VR is able to provide. You might have the AR component, but we still haven't seen any players in that space with the decentralized ecosystem. So they have a long way to go. I'm a huge proponent of the decentralized platforms, but they need to have a device killer in order to compete with Meta, in order to compete with now Huawei, in order to compete with whatever TikTok is going to get into, and their parent company to compete with when Apple comes out. And we know that Apple and Disney, they'll have their partnership, and so it's going to be like there's going to be so much conflict and so much tension between all these different ecosystems and all these different, I guess, factions, if you will. But yeah, who knows what the future is going to lie for us. Hopefully
That's
that answered
that,
your question.
And it's a great answer. Quick follow up. You distinguished intraoperability from interoperability. Do you have a taxon? I can imagine a number of different models of intraoperability. Can you kind of specify a little bit more what you mean by intraoperability and how it's defined?
Yeah, absolutely. So Entra, sorry, INTRA. So if we take, for example, Meta's current ecosystem and their platforms and their applications. So, for example, they have venues which you're able to see and view and hear concerts and entertainment shows. You have workrooms where you're able to meet with your people within your company or other companies. You have worlds where you're able to create these cool immersive meta spaces within their platform and do exploration and interaction. you're gonna have Horizon Homes, where you're able to, in the main menu, meet up with your friends, watch movies, text each other, just hang out in your own personal space. So you have those four platforms, right? The Entra operability, which comes into play here, at least from a meta standpoint, would be that, okay, you take your avatar from one ecosystem to another, from one platform to another through a simple portal teleportation, which they have integrated already, but not fully implemented throughout their different platforms. So that's where the Anthropic operability comes, creating an ecosystem and a framework within your own platform, right? When you get into the INTER is when you're incorporating, for example, in this case, Meta with a Roblox, which are two separate companies and two separate platforms and two separate servers, right? Being able to take your not only your avatar from one location or platform to another. So taking, for example, your avatar from the Horizon worlds to Roblox, right? Seamlessly. I'm talking like just going through a portal or like literally walking from plot A to plot B of a 2 centimeter walk, and you're literally into Roblox. That is where I see the trouble come into play, because you have so many, like I mentioned before, competing forces here and IPs, and just like the infrastructure is not built out yet, in order to hold all these different. You have a gaming engine and you have a VR engine, and right now Facebook Meta is having trouble just spawning more than 20 avatars. By contrast, you have a gaming engine, let's say a Call of Duty, where you're able to spawn more than 100 instances of characters. So that whole, just at a very high level, technical level, is not built out yet. But then you get to the more like mid-tier, low level sort of tension between corporations and companies that I just don't see playing out over time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
And but by the way, because we spoke about this, I don't know, last week, because of the Roblox and the Nike thing. For those who are interested on it, and and if you're interested in Roblox in general, their entire investor day, including the stuff they presented in regards to Nike Land, is on their website. It is a 4-hour thing to have to sit through, so you have to have time. But it gives a lot of information on everything they're working on, and Roblox is kind of ahead of a lot of other companies on some of the metaverse thing. So, but they're also, like he said, a walled garden like Facebook, which is an issue.
That's on the Roadblock website.
The Roblox website, their website, they have a
Great.
4-hour presentation from their investor day that they just had this past week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, England.
Tyler, one last headline. And I have to do this in
Sure.
one sentence.
Yeah.
So it's from The Verge, so there's no paywall, and it's I had tweeted it out hours ago, so you could either retweet it or someone go to my site. But basically, it's a look under the hood of Netflix and how they basically have either duplicated or bypassed a lot of what we call CDNs like Akamai, so that they can get the content down to very close to your ISP, and why they have less issues with outages and less issues with buffering. And it's a fascinating technological. It's not about content. It's about their technology and how they deliver that content in a way that's so far advanced versus Disney or HBO or Paramount or any other streaming service.
What
Mhm.
company was that?
Netflix.
Thanks.
Netflix. Yeah.
Okay. The next one I have is that England will be the first country to require new homes and offices to include EV chargers. The British government's introducing legislation that will require all new built homes and offices to feature electric vehicle chargers. The first in the world.
Did you see that? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you see that in Norway they were so successful? It was Finland. They were so successful at getting EVs that it's actually impacting their tax revenue. There's not
Yeah,
enough
that's Norway.
gas.
Yeah, there's not enough gas vehicles to tax. Yes, that's Norway.
You should be aware that we actually have an electrical shortcomings in the Nordics as well. So yeah, this might give us quite a recoil.
And on a related note, Tesla releases new full self-driving beta 10.5 update with new features, improved VRU, pedestrian, bicyclists, and motorcycles crossing velocity error by 20% from improved quality, improved static world predictions like road lines, edges, and lane correctivity, improved 13% by using a new static world auto labeler and adding 165,000 auto labeled videos, improved cone and sign detection by up-revving the generalized static object network with 15,000 more video clips, etc., improved cut in direction network, enabled emergency collision avoidance maneuvering. Let's hope that's what I think it is, because Teslas were plagued with a really peculiar issue of running into emergency vehicles. So if this is emergency collision avoidance maneuvering, that would be a very notable fix. Enabled behavior to lane change away from merges when safe to do so, improved merge object detection, improved control for merges by increasing smoothness, improved lane changes, improved lateral control, improved modeling, improved logic, etc. So a whole bunch of updates in the new FSD beta 10.5 for Tesla. And that, my friends, brings
As
us...
a,
Yeah?
yeah, as a former paramedic, I would anticipate that this emergency vehicle avoidance means that the car stops behind, not swear around it, because that would actually be more hazardous than breaking in behind it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that will take us to the end of today's session, but we will meet again tomorrow as usual, and hope you join us. And thank you to everybody for another fun headline-filled tech news around the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.